minutes until showtime. 4 minutes until showtime. Three minutes until showtime. Two minutes until showtime. Until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
It's been a long time, but welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kenny Long, and I am back at it due to popular demand. I've had a lot of requests to start doing these shows again, so here we are. It's been a long time, so I am starting from scratch. Previously I used to do videos in a series. I'd have certain topics that I would want to talk about, and the shows would follow off of each other from discussions and so forth. So it's been so long that I think I am going to start right from day one. I really pushed this show out to the Rates and Lanes Facebook group. So if you are on Facebook, go ahead and join that group. Keep the discussion going over there. I am streaming live now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Blog Talk Radio, on Restream, and I'm trying to watch the comments coming in from everybody. I've already seen some good questions coming in, which is awesome. If you are driving, go ahead and call the number, 917-889-9924. There's no codes or passwords or anything like that. Just give us a call. You could listen live on the phone. We've already got several people already on, it looks like. And we have a call screener. So this works like a radio call-in show. You can call and listen. And if you have a question, go ahead and press number 1 on your keypad. That raises your hand. Elizabeth is in the other room screening calls. She'll get your question, and I will try to bring you on. A few days ago, I guess just a day or two ago, I put out that I was going to do this show again. I had a lot of people in the Facebook groups asking me. Some of our own drivers are asking me. People that I haven't talked to in years were messaging me just in the past few weeks. I think there's a lot of big things going on in the industry. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of need and desire for information, and that's what I try to do for you all. So let me start from the beginning. My name is Kenny Long. I have been really an owner-operator, business owner my whole life. I've never really been an over-the-road company driver. I've never done it. I've been an owner-operator. When I was a teenager, my dad started an excavating company. I got my CDL to be able to haul heavy equipment back and forth to job sites, and it went up from there. I started going over the road when I first moved down to Florida, and I started leased onto some big carriers. I bought a truck. I had never been over the road before. I remember I didn't even know where to take showers, and I was an owner-operator. Okay, so that can tell you a little bit of my perspective on what it takes to become an owner-operator. I did join the Army when I was 30 years old. I did a year in Iraq. While I was in Iraq, my wife and I had talked about putting drivers in the truck, but she wanted to travel. So we went ahead and got our own authority, and we've grown it from there. We're now running a small fleet, and we added a brokerage as well. So we're a broker, we're a carrier. I've got experience as owner-operator. I still drive, although not very much. I am going to try to do this show at least once a week, and after the new year, I will try to do it on a regular schedule, but between now and then, I can't make any promises on when I will do the show. So it's going to be at random times, because starting next week, Elizabeth and I are going to jump in the truck together and go on the road as a team for about 2 months for the holiday rush. So we do still drive, although not very often. I haven't really been in the truck since last year for the holiday rush. We run the fleet. We have a full-time person that works in the office doing data entry and really can run most of the trucking company side. And I do compliance. I help all the drivers with their bookkeeping, how to run the truck, the mechanical aspect of it. I also have another company which I do consulting. I started doing this show in 2014. It was a spin-off of some Facebook groups that we had. One was Motor Carrier Meetup. We still have that group. It's exclusive only to motor carriers that have their MC number. And we used to do an annual event a couple times in Virginia. It was a free event to attend. And we would get together. We called it the Motor Carrier Meetup because that's what we did. We would all meet up and we would share stories, share tips, discuss things like we will talk about here on the show, about negotiation, about contracts, dispatch tips, and things like that. But it was very informal. It was a free event, and people from all over the country came in. People would fly in, and it was great to get to know people. And I was asked about that time, 2014, 15, I guess it was about 2015, I was asked to speak at Kevin Rutherford's event, CMC, in Kansas City. I spoke there in Kansas City, and then again in Council Bluffs. I don't remember, I spoke there 2 or 3 times over several years. In 2017, I put on my own event of that caliber. We rented out Harrah's Casino, and we did an event called The Drive. And I've also had a lot of interest in doing another event like that. This probably would have been the year, 2020, that we would have done the event. And when we started planning for it back in the spring, obviously the world practically ended. So that changed our entire plan, and we are looking for possibly doing something in 2021. But what I can help you with is really any aspect of the trucking business. I can tell you about what it's like to be a broker. I can tell you how to get started as a broker, as a carrier, how to make sales calls, how to buy your first truck, become an owner-operator, what to look for when you're leasing to a carrier, the maintenance issues. And I have a long list of things that I things that people brought up, things that we should talk about 30 different topics. Each one of these I could do at least an hour show. If you've listened to my shows in the past, you know that I can come on the show with nothing to talk about 5 minutes before we start, and I will go for 2 hours. So when you get me talking about trucking, I can elaborate. I know a lot of the details, the legalities, the running the fleet, and working both sides of it, still being a driver, understanding both sides from a carrier and broker side. I bring a different perspective that some of the other coaches and so forth out there don't necessarily have the ability to do. And again, I also help with compliance. I've been to other companies for consulting to help them get their businesses straightened out. And so if you have any questions about what I have done or anything like that, go ahead and give us a call. Again, I am trying to watch all these different feeds coming in from the different groups and social media and so forth. I've got 3 screens here. If you've seen my computer setup, I might as well be working for NASA, but it's just so much going on, it's difficult. So the easiest way to communicate here is to give me a call. So 917-889-9924. And again, if you are driving, if you're trying to watch a video while you're driving, please don't. Go ahead and turn that off. Call the phone number. You can listen live, 917-889-9924. If you are on the phone and you have any questions, comments, go ahead, press number 1, and that will raise your hand. Elizabeth will bring you on the air. I already see comments coming in. Again, I cannot see all of them at once, but I'll do my best to try to keep up. There's just a lot of different streams because we're on so many platforms. So again, calling is the easiest way. I am going to blow through a bunch of these topics, and I will give just a few bullet points on some of these because going forward, I think I am going to do full shows pretty much on each one of these. Again, there's 30 different topics here. Some of them could be combined, and some of them are probably pretty broad, and I would need to break them down. So the big one, and I think it's on everybody's mind right now, what is the market doing? This market is phenomenal. There is no 2 ways about it. That being said, I could go on and on about different indicators and different things in the marketplace, in the freight market and so forth. And I will just say that, yes, it's great right now. But I encourage you all. Let me take these earbuds out. It's a little easier. I'll put those in when I get on the phone here. But I encourage you all to be very, very careful in the decisions you make going forward. I've explained this market before as the slinky effect. If you remember, just a few months ago, rates were record lows, rock bottom, horrible, and they were, on average, below the cost of operation. Absolutely. The rates were in the toilet. They were horrible, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There were way too many trucks and not enough loads. 70% of the country was shut down. Most of us were affected directly. Most of our family members were put out of work. But the truckers kept going. 70% of the freight came off the roads. The only thing that was moving at that time was really food and medical supplies. All the factories were closed, mills were closed, everything, imports, exports came to a complete total halt. And most of that has come back at some point. Some segments are still lagging behind, playing catch up. The unemployment has springboarded back the other way. We are back down to around 6%, which is phenomenal. And analysts were saying that we probably wouldn't get below double digits before the end of the year. And here we are at 6-something%, which is awesome. But what that tells me is we are correcting for the negative that we had back in the spring. We are seeing, again, due to political factors, due to economic factors and so forth, we're seeing again shortage in some areas. You're starting to see, unfortunately, grocery stores are getting short on supplies again. Lumber, I was posting in the Facebook group. Some of you may have seen it. I am looking to build a house, and the lumber prices just in the past 6 months have tripled and quadrupled, depending on the materials that you want. Building materials across the board are way, way, way up. And that will correct itself as well. I am a good example of that. I will not be building a house or a barn or shed or anything this year because the price is so exploded right now. I am going to push off at least until next year and hope they come down. And construction projects like that will be put on hold across the country and probably globally. This is an issue that's happening everywhere. The mills are running at full capacity and they just can't keep up. Same thing with food and other things. It has a ripple effect. So, on the other side of that, while we have phenomenal rates, people are going out and buying trucks, becoming owner-operators for the first time, getting their authority for the first time, buying trailers. Trailer orders are just through the roof. We're months and months and months on back order right now. Just 2 months ago, you could go to just about any trailer dealer in the country, and they would beg you to take one. There was no need for trailers. The supply was abundant, and there was virtually no demand. Now, you can't get a trailer anywhere. Matter of fact, we were trying to get another trailer from a leasing company up in the Midwest, and they are out, completely out. One of the biggest leasing companies out there. Cannot get a trailer from them. We have a local relationship with our dealer here in Florida. We rented several trailers from them back in the midsummer. No problem. They didn't have room to park trailers. They had so many. Now, it is a big empty field over there. And we actually called them today asking what kind of inventory they had. And we were put on a waiting list, and they said they have not seen this kind of demand in 30 years. Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because we are shifting the opposite of where we were a few months ago when things were shut down. What we saw back in the spring was a just complete shut off of the tap of all freight everywhere. There are at any given time, roughly, give or take, 2 million trucks on the road. 70% of the freight was turned off, which means we had about 1.5 million, 1.4 million trucks, too many. And this was a time when drivers were in Washington, D.C. protesting. 1.5 million trucks could go home, turn the truck off, and stay home until that period was over. Nobody would have even noticed because that's how many extra trucks we had. It's estimated that we will probably lose about 10% of the overall freight volumes once we rebound, which means if there were 2 million on the road before, there'll be roughly 200,000 too many trucks once the market completely corrects. But here we are right now. Truck orders are months behind. Trailer orders are months behind. Used truck prices are through the roof. You can't find one. Used trailers are through the roof. You can't find one. People are buying trucks and growing their fleets as fast as they possibly can. What happens then? Use some logic here. What happens if in a few months we catch up and the market is corrected and we catch up. Now we already had 200,000 too many, and how many thousands upon thousands more have joined the industry, and just think about where that puts us. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but just use common sense and do not overextend yourself. I guess that's really the message that I'm trying to send here. Be very, very careful and do not overextend yourself. Yes, rates are phenomenal right now, but they will not be like this forever. What goes up must come down. So that's my take on the market right now. It's a fantastic market. Capitalize on it. Take advantage of what you can right now. But do not build a business based on the rates today. Remember I said it's the slinky effect. We were way over on one side. Freight was just shut off. Slinky way back over to the other side. And that's going to correct. And we are going to go back past the center line. We're going to go back to really low rates, to possibly below operating rates. More than, it takes to operate the truck. We may not be able to get average rates that will justify or be able to pay for operating the truck. A lot of people will go out of business when that happens. And it will happen. It always happens. Every few years it happens. Even if this COVID crisis never affected the market, those types of corrections happen. We were in a bit of that correction process in 2019, and everybody had hoped that 2020 would be better, and then it happened, COVID. So just be very, very careful. Nobody can predict what's going to happen next. There's just too many variables. It's fantastic right now. I understand it's fantastic right now. People are telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about back in the spring because I said it wasn't going to get this good. And I'm just very hesitant. So be conservative, be careful, and plan accordingly. Build your business on what average rates could or should be. Look at 2019 rates. That's kind of the average of where we settled and was probably a sustainable market. We are way above that right now. So just be very careful not to build your business based on today's rates. All right, so that's the market comment. I see stuff coming in here. I see we've got some calls on. If you have any questions, comments, I will bring you on the air. I'd love to hear some voices. Any questions or comments, things that you want to tell me about, things that you've seen out there, and I'm going to go down my list and keep going. Nobody's got their hand raised in the phone room, in the green room right now, so I'll wait until they do. Again, you just press number 1, and that will raise your hand in there. So that brings me to the next thing, getting authority. Should you get your authority? When is a good time to get your authority? That's really a hard question. It's always a good time to make a good, positive business move. It's always a good time. It doesn't matter if the market is good or bad. I've said this before. If you are becoming an owner-operator for the first time, absolutely it's a good time. If you're getting your authority for the first time, absolutely it's a good time. That's always my answer. But it comes with a caveat, and that is plan accordingly. Plan ahead. Have a good business plan in place. Every person that calls me and asks for advice, the first thing I ask them is, do you have a business plan? And I don't remember the last time anybody told me that they did. Whether it's even an idea of what they want to do with their business. They never even thought that far ahead. All they know is they want to buy a truck and become an owner-operator. But they never put any thought into where they will get their work, what kind of work they'll be doing. They just want a truck and they want to go to work. Okay, so what are you going to do with it? What is your end game? Why? Start with why. Do you want to retire? Do you want to build a fleet? Do you want to have your authority? Do you want to have a fleet under somebody else? Do you want direct customers? Where are you going with your business? What is the purpose? Do you have a customer base? Does anybody need you? Right now, people need you. In a few months, people may not need you. What will you do at that point? So have a plan in place. What will you do next? Where are you going? Your plan can be written in pencil and you can have a big eraser, but at least have an idea of what you will do with your business. Okay, so is it a good time to get your authority? Absolutely. Is it a bad time to get your authority? Absolutely, if you don't have a plan. Horrible idea to get your authority if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a concept of what it takes. And a lot of times when I start asking people that, and they want to get their own authority, they oftentimes are asking some very, very basic questions about the industry, which there's no problem with that. If you don't ask the questions, you'll never learn the answers. But if you're asking the most basic questions, then it's probably not a good idea for you to jump into the major leagues of getting your own authority and trying to run everything. Some people are trying to get their own authority, buy a truck. They don't have a CDL. They want to hire a driver to run it, or they want to buy a bunch of trailers and they want to lease them out, and they don't have a plan on where they're going with that. They just heard there's a lot of money in it, but they don't know where to get it. They just want to jump in feet first and hope it works out. So it's always a good time. There's never a bad time, even if it's the worst market out there. If you can form a plan and get the customers and fill a need for someone. But remember that anybody right now, you don't even have to have a CDL. You could go buy a truck today and a trailer, and you could get your authority. You could go down to some local testing site, take your road test in that truck and trailer, have your driver's license, or your CDL rather, and start driving under your own authority on day one. You absolutely could do that. But you probably won't be successful unless you do a lot of research first. I have helped somebody do just that very thing and did great for a couple of years, and then he just got bored with it and sold off and went and started another business. But he planned ahead, and the key was he had a business mind. He didn't come into this as a trucker. He came into this planning to run a business. That's another one of my topics here. If you are an owner-operator, you are running a business. If you have your own authority, you are running a business. It's important that you get out of the mindset of a truck driver, especially if you are in the mindset of a company driver, where it's miles, miles, miles. I follow a bunch of different YouTubers and people that are trying to coach on driving and all this different stuff, and I promise you, if you listen to some of these guys, you will fail. If they end their broadcast with go out there and make more miles, and that's what they're focused on, and they're telling you how to make more miles, and that's the direction of their comments, you will fail. It's not about making miles. You can't deposit miles. I think that was exactly how somebody put it in the Facebook group. You don't deposit miles, you deposit money. So learn how to make the money. The next thing under that was knowing your cost, learning how to operate based off of your cost, regardless of what the market is doing. So when I ask people what they need, and I'll bring them in, my own owner-operators, when I bring them in for orientation, I put them through a class on what they need to operate. And I said, what do you need to move this load? What do you need? Not what do you want? Not what does somebody else tell you they need, not what the averages are. What do you need to move a load? What are your numbers? But I ask them, what do you need to move this load? And they always give me some numbers that are just all over the board. I've done this I did this in front of a room of 200 people. I'm on stage and I asked this, and somebody on one side of the room said 75 cents a mile, and somebody on the other side of the room said $3 a mile. And I pick on both of those. Based on what? Based on what? 75 cents a mile says, well, I don't have a driver to pay. That's just my fuel and maintenance. Really? You don't have a driver to pay? Who's driving your truck? Well, I drive it myself. If you drive it yourself, you have a driver, right? Does that mean you're willing to work for free? Are you out here to work for free? Now, I understand. You go down to South Florida. You go to Miami. There's not a lot coming out. You can make good money going in. And you're telling me that your cost is 75 cents a mile going in or coming back out. Great, but that means that somewhere you had to make enough money to justify going in to an area like that to pay yourself for your time coming back out. You have to understand the cost overall. And a lot of times when I start breaking the cost down, people will tell me, well, I need X amount per mile. Based on what? Well, based on I'm going to run 120,000 miles a year. Okay? And then we'll start talking about negotiation, and they say they focus on more money and less miles. Well, there's a conflict there. If you're focusing on more money and less miles, but your revenue and your cost is based on running a certain number of miles, where is the balance? You have to adjust that. You need to know the time factor. How much will it cost you if it's only 100 miles or 500 miles? There's still a cost there. If you were to go out and buy a truck and park it in your driveway for a year, there is still a cost. You still have a truck payment. You still have insurance. You still have license plates. Even if you don't run it, there is still a cost. There's a cost if it's 100 miles or 500 miles or 1,000 miles. There's still a cost that has to be equated over that time factor. So how will you adjust for that? It's great if you want to run 120,000 miles and you want to do it at $2 a mile or whatever random number you want to pick. That's fantastic. But what happens if you base all of that on $2 a mile, but then your average is only your average annual miles is only around 90,000 because you negotiated all your numbers or all your rates, all your line haul rates based on that 120,000, and you knew that you could make a profit at the $2 or $2.10 or $2.20 or whatever number it is, and you negotiate for that, but then you only run 90,000 miles instead of 120. Now all of a sudden you're 30,000 miles short at $2 a mile. That's $60,000 short for the year. Where's that extra money coming from? You didn't plan for that. Great if you can get more money, but do you know if it balances out? Do you know if that average still exceeds that total that you needed for the year? So knowing your cost is extremely important. Getting out of the truck driver mentality, getting into the business owner, getting into the CEO mindset, getting out of that truck driver mentality of needing to run and needing to get those miles. I would love to sit on the couch, not have to work at all, and still collect a check. But I still have to come to work every day. But you have to get out of that, I need more miles and more miles and more miles. I have actually had people turn down phenomenal money. Just a quick story. I had a team truck I think it was in Houston, Texas, somewhere like that. And it was on a weekend, and it was going to my load, rather, was going to New Orleans. So it was a relatively short load for a weekend for a team. And so when I asked the drivers, what do they need to move this? Well, they don't want to do it because it's not enough miles. Okay, I understand it's not enough miles. What will it take for you to do this load? I absolutely will not do it because it's not enough miles. Will you do it for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000? What will it take? Name your price. I'd like to have a team on this so that there's somebody with the truck at all times. I understand you won't be driving, but I need somebody there. What will it take? And they just wanted miles. To the point, and this sounds ridiculous, to the point that they actually considered an offer when I told them that they could drive out of route miles to get to the same place and I would pay them the mileage. So to go from Houston to New Orleans, I was starting to throw offers at them. Well, I understand, but what if you take it by way of Kansas City or St. Louis? Would that work for you? And they actually considered it when I put it that way because it was just more miles, even though it was the same amount of money. There's a disconnect with what has to happen there. There's a disconnect in how the business works. Don't get caught in that type of a mindset. Now, in that case, I can tell you right off the bat that was a dispatch service. That dispatch service had promised their truck a certain number of miles for the weekend, and they failed to tell them about the money. So that's my thoughts on the dispatch service. I probably would not use one if I were you. All right. Again, guys, call the number 917-889-9924. We do have some callers on. All you got to do is press 1, and we'll bring you on the air. If you call, you are not automatically on. I've got several lines you can open up here. There's no limit to how many calls I can get. You can listen to the show live while we're broadcasting. Let me see if I can read some of these comments and go back a little ways. I still have a lot to talk about on my sheet. Thanks for your service. I served in Iraq as a Terp for 3 years, 8 different battalions, and it was an honor. Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for yours as well. What is the best trucking system to use to keep expenses and calculate rate per mile aside from QuickBooks? That's an awesome question. That's actually on my sheet, so let me come back to that. And this ties into this next one. Trucking Office or TruckLogix, any thoughts on which is better for a leased operator? Truck Logics by far. I run Patriot Star. That's the name on my shirt here. We are hiring owner-operators, and one of the things that I do is I provide Truck Logics. I provide a seat, your own private seat, to Truck Logics. I pay for it because I think it's super important to know your numbers. That's what I was just talking about. And so I want all of our drivers to understand. Now, if they have their own system, that's fine, but I provide this Truck Logics for them. It's great because there's an app for the driver. It's very intuitive. It's easy to use and breaks down all your costs. It'll track your fuel economy. It's if you get it on your own, it's super inexpensive. For a lease operator, it's about $7, $8 a month. And it's by far the best program that I've found. And it scales with you, which is another great thing. If you get it as a lease operator and then you go off and you buy multiple trucks or you get your own authority, you even become a broker, there are options that scale with you. You can run a fleet of up to 100 trucks or more, I guess, really, with this program, and it's not that expensive to do it. So it's an awesome program, and it syncs with QuickBooks. So you can actually do all of your bookkeeping, everything you need in that program, Truck Logics. If there's some things that are outside of the trucking, for example, some of the things we do some warehousing, and we'll hire labor and things like that. And that's not trucking specific. So what we do is we use QuickBooks to track those types of things. So you can sync it up, and it works phenomenally for tracking your loads. If you have drivers, you can dispatch your drivers with it. There is an app, so you can take pictures, you can scan documents with it. You can do all your invoicing with it when you get to the level that you need invoicing. So Truck Logics has my vote. It's a phenomenal system. I believe spending habits have changed. And this is Dave. I believe spending habits have changed. Money typically spent on vacations as bars is now being spent on stuff moving on trucks. I agree with that. The package delivery companies typically have their what they call peak season, their holiday rush season, right around the week of Thanksgiving through Christmas. Because most of the brick and mortar stores closed and there is still a fear of going out in public for a lot of people, this was a big push by all the online retailers, including, obviously Amazon was number one, but even Walmart and every brick and mortar store that had a website was selling their product online. So these package delivery companies have been in peak season since April. The volumes that they normally only saw after Black Friday, they have been seeing it all year long. So absolutely spending habits have changed. People can't travel. People are stuck at home. They're getting homesick. There's no vacations. There's a lot of people couldn't even go out to eat. They still can't in a lot of places in the country. So they are spending their money on things at home. That's one of the reasons that the lumber prices are up. If you go to Home Depot, a lot of people are taking on those household projects right now because they're home, and there's a lot of people working from home right now. There is a big shift in the retail industry. There's a big shift in the trucking industry. So absolutely, there is a huge shift. Stuff is moving on trucks. But people are only going to buy so much stuff. And eventually, they've had plenty of stuff, and they're going to start traveling again, and they are going to go back to work in person. They're going to start doing things normal again. And what happens then? Again, slinky effect. We're going to see a glut in the retail sales. We're going to see it shift the other direction. All right, so on YouTube, we got Jonathan is saying, someone told me it's the billion-dollar industry. I want the money and I want it now. More miles equals more money. And I think I'm certain that he's being sarcastic. His next comment, $1.20 a mile is good money, right? And I'm sure that's sarcasm 100%. But there are fleets that are paying that, and there are owner-operators that are signing on to that right now because they have virtually unlimited miles. There is so much freight to move right now that nobody is sitting idle. All of these mega fleets are pushing every driver to move as much as they possibly can. So $1.20 a mile, while it's far beneath what you could be making on spot market, there is consistency there. And there's a lot to be said for consistency. So you can make decent money, being consistent with that. One of the questions I had was, is being contracted under package delivery companies or the mega fleets sustainable? At $1.20 a mile plus fuel surcharge right now is, depending on the program, somewhere in the 20-cent range. So $1.40 a mile. That would be really tough right now. It would be very, very tough to be making it on $1.40 a mile. Now, with that, they cover a lot of the other expenses like insurance and things like that. But with maintenance, paying drivers, and again, even if you drive it yourself, you have to pay yourself. You have to work that into the equation. So in a program like that, the cost of operation is usually somewhere in the 90-cent ballpark range, but that's only leaving about 30 cents plus fuel surcharge profit. That makes it a little tough. So it's doable, but the profit margins are slim, especially if you were to hire a driver and put them in that truck. And the Facebook feed, if you're watching on YouTube, the Facebook feed is in the Rates and Lanes group. It's also in the You Drive You page. And Elizabeth, I think, shared it out to a lot of different people. And Taylor is one of our new drivers. He's on Facebook. Listen to this man. Him and Liz being Elizabeth, my wife, made me understand the cost per day versus the rate per mile, and I have been making good money. Taylor is a new owner-operator. He's been doing great. He's just getting his feet wet in this. But that was one of the things that he's had to learn is the time value, especially he's pulling a reefer. There's a lot of detention issues, layover, things like that with a reefer, and you have to work that into your rates. You have to understand that part of it. Okay, and one of our former drivers who left us to get his own authority said that he would do a mock call negotiating a load. I'm not sure if that would go well or not. Let's see. That's not sure how that would work out, but maybe we can try that with a little bit of prep so we know it. We don't try to catch each other off guard. All right. All right, guys, the phones are still open. There's a few callers on, but nobody raised their hand yet. Looks like Elizabeth's got 2 lines of her own on, so she's really in tune with what's going on, I guess. But, all right, so, and I apologize, I've got so many different things going on here with all this. It's a lot to keep up with. All right. Bear with me while... Oh, and Elizabeth is letting me know that Taylor may have been referring to the other Liz. So my wife, Elizabeth, and we have another Liz that works, and she does our data entry and helps the drivers and different things. And so Liz also helped with Taylor. So thanks, Elizabeth. I wanted to make sure that was cleared. All right. When to become an owner-operator, when to add drivers or owner-operators. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Have that plan. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of right now, which is very dangerous, is a lot of people are saying they're going to try to hire owner-operators. They're going to let people use their numbers, is what they're saying. They let people use their numbers to run their trucks. It really doesn't work that way. There is a lot on the line. And let me share a quick story on that here. I just found another feed that I wasn't even aware of. So, all right, let me get back over here so I can pay attention to what's going on. All right. So some of you may have read the article recently. There was a carrier in South Florida. One truck, one driver, drove it himself. He was a single operator, and he was involved in an accident, major accident. And the court ruled, this was the biggest ruling in history against a trucking company, especially a single one truck, one driver operation. It was over $400 million. $400 million. So let me ask you this. Do you feel that it would be smart to hire a bunch of drivers to let them run your numbers because you think you're going to make a quick buck, when you could be on the hook for a $400 million lawsuit because you screwed something up? One of your drivers could go out, cause a major fatality accident, and you, because it's your name on the side of the door, will be held liable for a $400+ million lawsuit. And then the other comments are, well, I'm going to charge them 5%, 10%. First of all, if you are a carrier and you're leasing on owner-operators, you're not charging anybody anything. You're paying them. You are paying them whatever you feel fit to pay them. If you want to base it on the line haul rate or whatever rate they negotiate and so forth, so be it. But at the end of the day, that's just a baseline. You are paying them your amount. Somebody just said something about $1.20 a mile. If you want to pay owner-operators $1.20 a mile plus fuel to run for you and you can get them to do that, that's up to you. The rate that it's based on is completely irrelevant. So you are paying them. So if they are getting $2 per mile and you want to pay them 90% of that and they get $1.80, that's fantastic. If you want to pay them 80%, 50%, whatever. What it comes down to is, what do you provide for that money? So those of you that are looking at carriers, or those of you that may be looking at leasing on owner-operators, what are you going to provide for your money? For example, we pay 80% of the line haul. The drivers can self-dispatch, but we provide all the back office support. We run the IFTA. I mentioned that we provide TruckLogix. I provide consulting on the backside of that. I help with our drivers. One of the reasons I haven't done this show in so long is because I'm trying to spend more time working on our own businesses. If a driver calls me, if a driver is to call me right now, and I hope they don't, but if they were to call me right now, they would have priority over even this broadcast. So our drivers always get priority. I provide a top level DAT load board. If you were to get it yourself, it'd be $250 a month. I provide you a seat to that. You have the camaraderie of all the other drivers. So we encourage everybody to work together. And those are the kinds of things you get for that. If you're going to work for some fly-by-night company that may or may not have the funds to make it work, doesn't have the trailers, doesn't have the relationships, doesn't have any of these things, they're just looking for a quick buck, then I think you need to be careful for yourself. And Jonathan said it was a nuclear verdict at $400 million. It was good luck collecting that. Absolutely. The families will never see that. They'll probably get the million or whatever the driver was insured for. It may have only been $750,000. But it was a statement. If it had been one of these mega fleets, they would suck them dry. But it was a statement that this court made. It was a nuclear verdict, and it was a statement for the whole industry to pay attention to. So, granted, they'll never get all that, but this driver is out of business, lost everything he owned, probably had to file bankruptcy to stay with it. Lucky that he's probably not being brought up on civil and criminal charges as well based on this stuff. So I don't know what the follow-up story is to this, but that's obviously a career-ending, life-changing event. He'll never own anything and never have anything ever again. There will always be attorneys breathing down his neck. There will be banks and courts breathing down his neck. The IRS was probably breathing down his neck. They'll probably, if he ever just gets a regular job, they'll probably take everything he's got. So those kinds of things. But you could go ahead and lease on an owner-operator, make a quick buck. That's fine. And there's a couple of drivers, looks like they're in the YouTube groups talking about our program. So, and I don't mean to advertise on here, but we are hiring. So, all right, so let me get back to our list and let me check the phones here. Again, we've got several people on the phones. If you want to chime in and say anything, go ahead. Press number 1 on your keypad, and we'll bring you on. Best insurance and how much? So here's another one. Now, one of the places where I think there's a lack of understanding is what insurance you need, what insurance you can and cannot get as an owner-operator, or what you can and cannot provide as a carrier. So a carrier must provide the cargo and liability insurance. There's a guy on one of these groups trying to promote this carrier, and he says if you go to their website, one of the requirements is you must provide the cargo and liability insurance, and that's not possible. They must provide it. They could share the cost with you, but they must provide it. You have to be on their policy if you are leased to them, if it's their name on the door. Which brings me to another point. If you lease to somebody, it has to be their name on the door. Just recently, we had a driver come to pick up a load from me. Me personally, I was loading the truck, came to our place here in Florida, and showed up, and it was not the trucking company that I hired. It was a different company altogether. So I looked into it, and the driver thought he had his own authority, but he was not active. And then he said he was leased to this other carrier, but the other carrier did not have him on the insurance. So this driver was basically hauling double brokered loads for this other carrier and did not have any insurance whatsoever. And the other carrier didn't care, because if he was in an accident, they just wash their hands of it and say, I don't know who that is. It's his name on the door. So this driver was at a huge risk. So if you are going to lease to a carrier, make sure you understand the requirements and obligations of that carrier. If you are a carrier and you're in one of these programs where you're saying you're going to provide everything for 10% or 8%, I've seen, make sure you understand that in addition to being on the hook for a potential $400 million lawsuit, you also have to supply them with the insurance and the proper credentials to run. The owner-operator can get their own license plates. An owner-operator can get their own IFTA accounts. If that's the case, the carrier needs proper documentation to make sure that they're all in compliance, but is not required for the owner or for the carrier to supply those things. It's an option, but it's not required. These are some of the things. There are so many people out here right now that are trying to make a quick buck, and they're trying to get their authority and lease on owner-operators. And these are the types of things that I'm seeing them say. They don't know what is required. They don't know what they're doing. So, and I would love to, if anybody has any questions, if you want to call in now, or you could call us, contact us, find us on Facebook, or call us at the office, and we can have a discussion. I can sit down with you. I can help you get your own authority. I can help you make decisions to become an owner-operator. I'm willing to do all of those things. I just want to make sure you do it right. I tell our own drivers, if you sign on with me, I will teach you how to do everything you need to do. I will teach you how to get your own authority, and I will teach you how to do anything. And if you ever leave, I won't be disappointed as long as you are moving forward. I just get disappointed if you take a step backwards. So I want to help you move forward, and I will do that. I'd love for you guys to come lease on, and we can do it together, or I will help you one-on-one, whatever it takes. But I don't want to see anybody fail. Understanding that you have to supply certain things for the drivers, what you are responsible for. As an owner-operator, what you can and can't do, what rights you have are extremely important. A lot of owner-operators don't understand that they are a business owner, and they have some choices, but at the same time, that truck is leased to the carrier. And for all intents and purposes, the carrier owns that truck. The carrier can do whatever they want with that truck. You as a business owner can refuse to use your truck in that manner, but as far as things like forced dispatch or telling you to run certain routes and so forth, the carrier can determine those things. So there could be a conflict of interest in some of that, but the carrier can determine a lot that happens with the truck. The carrier leases a truck, and understanding the role there. The carrier is not hiring a driver. The carrier is not bringing on an owner-operator to hire drivers. The carrier is leasing on a truck to add capacity to their fleet, and they can do whatever they want to do with that truck. As an owner-operator, you can set those boundaries with the carrier. It's up to you to negotiate that or get it in a contract, get in writing how that will work, what your relationship will be. And most people, it's pretty straightforward, but there is a disconnect. Some people don't understand what can and cannot be done. So just be very careful there and make sure you read that. TruckLogix, another question about that. I had the 15-day free trial, but I had no idea what I was doing. So that's something that I can offer. I am a reseller for TruckLogix. I'm not pointing you to come to me. You can go directly to TruckLogix. You can get a 15-day free trial. Or we have options. If you want to contact us, you can pay for it. I can basically get you the annual rate. I can get you on a monthly basis. And to help you get it set up, I could do that. There is a fee for that, but we can help you get things set up. I think TruckLogix is the way to go. Whether you're a lease operator or you are going to become your own carrier, it creates invoices and it does a lot of things. It's a very powerful online program, easy to access from the truck. It's got a great app, easy to use. And I appreciate it. We've got a few of our drivers and a couple of our former drivers that are in it looks like on the YouTube channel. So I appreciate the comments there, guys. Dave, Taylor, Chris. All right, it looks like we have, well, Elizabeth, are you screening the calls in there? Because we have a couple people have their hand raised if you want to grab that. As soon as she marks down which call to take first here, I'll go ahead and do that. All right. I need to get a pen and start checking these things off. I'm telling you, I have so much to talk about. Payment issues, how to secure payment. And again, I'm feeding you guys with a fire hose right now. I get that. I'm blowing through a bunch of different topics. Some of them are related, some are not. How to secure payment with a broker or a shipper. This is a tough one. So with a broker, you have a little bit of insurance because a broker is required to have a bond. Right now, it's only $75,000. Some of the bigger brokers have more. They might have $250,000 or $1 million bond in place. But the brokers that have that kind of money are usually the ones that are like C.H. Robinson, TQL, and obviously they are doing multi-millions of dollars of business, and they're not going to let you break into that bond whatsoever. They've got the deep enough pockets that for a small carrier they'll pay. So what it takes to get paid is, number one, communicate. Everything has to be in writing. Everything you talk about has to be in writing, including detention, layover, truck order not used, has to be in writing. If you don't get it in writing, it never happened. There is no obligation for anybody to pay you anything if there's no agreement about that. And there is no agreement if it's not in writing. It's got to be a written agreement. They can tell you whatever they want on the phone. As soon as they hang up the phone, whatever they told you is irrelevant. Must be in writing. You can use things like emails and so forth in your favor to argue it, but ideally you want it on a contract. You want it on the rate confirmation. Or you want it in the master contract agreement, which is another thing we'll talk about, the various contract red flags that you have to watch out for. Jamie Ford on YouTube has a comment that I want to clarify on that. I'll come back to that. Let me finish this topic here. Couple of good questions coming in on YouTube. All right. And okay, so this call is right in line with what I wanted to talk about. Let me put my headphones on here. This is right in line with what I'm trying to talk about with getting paid and so forth. Okay, we're going to go to Jonathan. Jonathan, are you with us?
Hey, Kenny. Yep, I'm here with you guys. This is Jonathan Trimble. So, I wanted to discuss because I'm having issues with brokerage every once in a while where we fulfill our side of the agreement, we deliver the load as as described and everything, and I want to say maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago we had one load where we actually went to the delivery. They didn't have any warehouse space, so then the broker is basically telling us, okay, well, this one's full. We're going to have you go 120 miles down the road, and we're going to pay you $400. And I'm like, on what planet do you tell me as a carrier that you're going to pay me $400? Isn't that my place to then tell you, after I fulfill my terms of my contract or my agreement with you, isn't it up to you to ask me how much it's going to cost to take it to somewhere else? Or do I just, because so many people out there, they don't stick up for themselves. And I think that's a common mistake. But, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Because I don't understand why there's always this amount of tension between the broker and the carrier whenever something doesn't go accordingly to plan.
Okay, well, right now, so back when rates were really cheap, right, when we could barely make a profit with the rates that brokers were offering us, brokers were making more, okay? There was bigger margins for them. Right now, that's not the case. Brokers are getting it in the shorts, okay? So they're trying to make up their losses by pinching every penny they can. So it may have been their mistake. I don't know exactly the details of your story. It may have been their mistake, and they honestly don't have enough money to pay you to go somewhere else, which means they're going to have to dig into their pockets. We've made that mistake before. Elizabeth and I booked a load to New Orleans, and it was 2 stops, New Orleans and I think Tampa, Florida. And we weren't clear on which product went to which location, and the driver took the wrong thing to the wrong place. And it was on us. We had to come out of our own pocket. We didn't make much. We made a couple $100 on the load, I think, but it cost us a couple $1,000 to hire another truck to take that load back. So we had to come out of pocket. Sometimes the brokers have to do that. The only way that you'll be able to get a broker to do that is to, like you said, stand your ground. Because if you don't do it, they'll have to hire somebody else. What would it take to hire another truck to haul that load? Now, they kind of have you held hostage because this product is already on your trailer in a situation like this. Now it comes down to just negotiating the details. Do you want to burn that bridge, or do you want to try to maintain that relationship? A broker is a customer. Do you want to take care of your customers? Maybe it was a mistake on their part. Maybe it was completely out of their control. Maybe it was the shipper's mistake and completely out of their control. And getting those details and trying to work with them and salvage a relationship, because there are definitely brokers out there. I've delivered stuff for free to make sure that we maintain that relationship. But at the same time, how much is it worth to you to maintain the relationship? If they're trying to take advantage of you, that's out of line. But at the same time, what benefit is it to you to try to take advantage of the situation and get more than they're offering and more than they can afford to pay? Now, they could say, okay, we won't pay you that. We'll file a claim and then get your insurance company involved, and then it just turns into a nightmare. And for the most part, the trouble and time lost is not worth the battle, the struggle. It's not worth it. So you have to draw that line in the sand somewhere and determine, what is it going to take? What is it worth to me to get this extra $100, $200, $300? What did you want on that load? If they offered you $4, what were you trying to get?
Right. But, isn't that the card they always play? Hey, we're going to file a claim on your insurance when there is, in fact, no claim to be had.
Sure.
And, as a scare tactic, and then on top of that, maybe it's the customer's mistake in this case, So, why is it that they don't just go back to their customer and say, hey, this is what the carrier needs, this is the extra charges? Why do they take it personally if the charges is not being made to them and it's going to their customer, why do they take it so personal?
Because the charge may not be going to the customer. It may have been their mistake, or they may have a different agreement with the customer. The agreement that the customer has is completely separate from the agreement that you have with the broker. It's two separate arrangements. They are completely separate. They may have lost money on the move just to get it down there, and they might be losing more to get it moved over to the other location. We don't know the circumstances, so they do take it personally because there are some broker agreements out there where, broker agents, it literally comes out of their pocket personally, that one individual agent. Now, these brokers like, I don't know, TQL and CH Robinson, they are multi-billion, with a B, billion-dollar companies. So you think, well, it's not a big deal. They can afford it. And I don't know if these companies actually, have this agreement with their agents. They might. This one agent might make $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and they have to personally eat it if they screwed up. That might be why. And there are a lot of agreements out there like that. And you won't ever know who you're dealing with or what you're dealing with. Maybe they can pass the cost on to the customer. Maybe it was the customer's fault. Or maybe they're also trying to salvage a relationship with the customer, and they have to decide for themselves. And this is where the negotiation comes in. They have to decide for themselves, how much do they want to take a hit on this? What's it worth to them? Do they want to salvage that relationship? Just like you have to do with your broker, they have to salvage that relationship. Now, you could stand the ground, and I would recommend also, if they say we're going to file a claim on this, call your insurance company immediately and say, this is what's happening. They're threatening to file a claim. I'm making this freight available. We just can't come to terms on the freight charges. And let them know. Most insurance companies have people that will get involved to help you and get this stuff sorted out. And that comes down to detention issues. That comes down to, if you get turned away, layover issues. The insurance companies, a lot of times, will help you draw that line in the sand if they are using that as a threat. Because the insurance company will call them up right then and say, look, there's no claim here. We're making this freight available. It's up to you to pay the charges. You could also, see, the thing is, what a lot of brokers, where you have to, stand your ground, is explain to them, look, I have a customer here. So I booked this load, because brokers like to be the backhaul professionals, right? They are backhauls to get you back to your head haul. So if that's the case, and they're 120 miles in the wrong direction, and so now it's 240 miles to get back to where you wanted to be, well, they have to compensate you for that whole thing. And if you explain it to them like that, and explain to them, look, this was not my mistake, I will do it. We'll make this delivery, but it won't be today. It won't be this week. I won't have a truck going there. Another situation that came up this past week, driver went between Alabama and Houston, Texas, I guess ran the I-10 corridor. But that was it. They had company drivers. They only ran the I-10 corridor. They just went back and forth. They had customers on one end, and they used brokers to get back. Well, it was a similar situation, and the load actually had to go to Dallas. They don't service the Dallas area at all. That is not something they do. And they called the broker and said, we cannot do that for you. I'm sorry, we do not have trucks that go there. Can't happen. And, the broker tried to do the same thing. Well, you must do it. We're paying you this much. And so they gave him what I call the Japanese no. We'll do it, but it's going to cost you X amount, because we have to we're going to have to bring in a special driver. We're going to have to take a truck out of route, which takes that truck off our round trip runs, and it's going to change everything. So this is not just a simple extra stop for us. This was not negotiated. And ultimately, the broker had to bend to their terms. Now, the broker might blackball you, and this again goes back to, what do you want to salvage with this relationship? If they never use you again, are you okay with that? Do you want to do them this favor? And it all goes down to negotiation. So some of the things that you could do is, in your master agreement with them, is put in writing. Some will accept it, some won't, but you could put in writing a redelivery charge of whatever your amount would be. So X amount per mile. So what is common is to say the out of route miles at the same rate per mile as the line haul for the initial load, plus an extra, $150, $200 or whatever that is. So that's a common way to try to get ahead of it, because at least you have that in writing ahead of time. But stuff like that is hard. It's hard to predict when an issue arises. common things like detention, layover, you can negotiate that because it's common enough that it's something that you want to talk about. But if there's another issue, there's a shortage, there's a claim, things like that, how will that be handled? Or a redelivery charge, how will that be handled? That's not something that you'll think to negotiate on every individual load.
Right.
Sometimes the brokers will take advantage of the situation thinking, okay, well, I know that it's 2 stops and it's coming from Seattle, Washington to Miami, Florida. And if I have to hire a second truck to move this, it's going to cost me, an extra $4,000 or $5,000. But if I forget to tell this driver something and then I can get it done for an extra $400, it's in my favor. You got to make sure they don't take advantage of you like that. But again, this just comes down to negotiation, and negotiation is all communication. You got to get the details, build a relationship with them so that they're not lying to you, that they have no incentive to lie to you. We've had situations, for example, we had a flatbed load or step deck load. It was hauling crane parts. The broker wanted us to pick it up on Friday to meet the crane to unload on a Monday. When the driver arrived, they were told, oh no, the crane isn't scheduled until Tuesday. But then there was a $250 layover. Well, that was not enough for us because we had another load booked. This cost us a lot. We wanted a $1,000 layover. And of course, they didn't want to pay it. Now, if we had negotiated that in the beginning, we would have wanted another $1,000 on the load. They did that on purpose, what we found out later, because they knew that their terms of their contract were only $250. So by neglecting to give us the correct information, they took advantage of us and were able to hold us. And believe me, we didn't settle for $250. But we did get blackballed by that major broker for several months. We had to work it out. But we stood our ground on it. And so you have to decide what's it worth to you.
So let me ask you something. I mean, do you feel like when it comes to the brokers, who are obviously oftentimes big brokers and everything, they have hundreds of loads, you come across them every day and everything. Do you feel like brokers, they just like smooth over the carrier that's maybe a one-man operation, one-man truck? Or do you think they're more inclined to, try to work out with the carrier, like somebody like us and everything? We have about 90 to 100 trucks in our fleet and everything. But for the other guys, the other smaller carriers that maybe just have 1 to 10 trucks in their fleet, they don't really care so much about, I feel like sometimes. Is that wrong? Is that?
Okay, so there is a bit of that. I can see what you're saying, and that could definitely happen. But here's the other side of that same coin. When they call your company and you've got 100-something trucks, they don't know who they're going to get. When they call Patriot Star, they're going to talk to that particular specific one driver, and that allows that one driver to build a relationship. Okay, so we have one of our guys recently, Dale, left. Got his own authority. It was awesome. And he had built some relationships with brokers. And one of the things that I saw him saying it's been about 3 months, and I follow him to see how he's doing. And one of the things that he recently said was he loved it because the brokers talked to him. They didn't try to call the carrier. And now that he's on his own, the brokers call him, and he's got relationships. And he works with about half a dozen brokers total. That's it. There's no reason to work with more. One of the things that can really harm a carrier is to jump around and work with any Joe Schmo broker for the next fastest buck and not building a relationship.
Right.
And that's the easiest way to not get taken advantage of. Dave is on here, and he's doing reefer now, but before this, he had about 4 or 5 brokers that he would call because he was doing pad wrap, and those were his primary customers, and he knew how to talk to them. He knew their mannerisms. He knew what to say. He knew what kind of rates they would expect. Then they knew the same from him. They know what kind of service he will provide. There's no reason to lie to him because he is there to work out all the details. If they call just some random truck to move that same load, they're going to try to get every nickel out of it. They don't care about the truck or anything. When Dave called, they know what they're getting for their money, right? So he's got that relationship. The only times that I can remember Dave really getting screwed on anything was when he worked with some random brokers to do something out of the norm, or to fill in the gap between the loads for his main brokers. That's the only time that he really had issues. The rest of the time, everything seemed to work out fine. So building relationships, so your question, I guess, is, how do you prevent brokers from taking advantage of you? Number one, build strong relationships. And don't just go chasing the money, because if you're just chasing the money, so are they. Okay, so if you are building a relationship, they're hiring you for that relationship. And another question I've got on my sheet here is, what do you do to find customers when this slows down? And best way to find dedicated freight when this stuff slows down. And that is, be a salesman, not a trucker, not a driver. And a salesman maintains those relationships. And you might not get something dedicated on the first time you work with them, but over a period of time, when things slow down, you want to be the go-to guy. Because if you're the go-to guy, they're not going to screw you over like they might screw over the next guy. If they have a crap load that they know you don't want to deal with, they probably won't even offer it to you, because they want to maintain that relationship. If they have a load that they know is trouble, they probably won't offer it to you. We recently did a load like that was trouble, but in overcoming the problems, we built the relationship with that particular broker, and the broker told us, look, this is one of our problem loads, and we don't even put it on our own trucks. We broker these loads out, because it was one of these brokers that has their, a carrier side as well. We broker these loads out because it's so much of a headache. Every time we try to move it, we prefer to broker it out and let the other carriers, outside carriers, deal with the headache. And that happens often. But now we have that relationship with them, and going forward, we probably won't get that load, but they will work with us on other stuff.
Yeah, but also, I guess another thing to think about, going back to the whole relationship, it's also easier, based on my experience, to get dedicated loads or dedicated contracts whenever the market's good. As long as you're giving them a reasonable price, as opposed to giving them, spot rate or whatever.
Absolutely. Right now, when shippers are begging for trucks, which there are shippers begging for trucks right now, they cannot get their freight moved. Now is the best time to call and solve their problem. And sometimes they can't get their freight moved because brokers are demanding extreme rates, $5, $6 a mile for something. Mm-hmm. And I know they've done this because I've heard some of the phone calls when they literally, all it's worth to them is, what would normally be a $2 or $3 a mile run, and they're willing to pay $2 or $3 a mile. But to get raked over the coals for $4 and $5 a mile, knowing that the carrier is probably only going to get the $3, they're really having a struggle with that. So if you can go in and you can negotiate decent rates, cut the brokers out, and you can service that customer, now is a great time to do it. And if you can lock in a fair rate that they're happy with, as well as everybody else involved, then when things turn around and rates drop back down below what might be operating costs, they're more likely to continue paying above average rates, right? Above what, if everybody else is starving because they can't pay their fuel bill with the rates, hopefully you've established a relationship where you can at least be profitable still. But right. Now, absolutely, that's a good point. Now is a good time to do that.
Absolutely. And so another question that a lot of people, ask is, how do they go about, getting dedicated contracts or whatever? What is the process and everything? And maybe you can touch on that, being that you're a broker as well, and just kind of touch on that a little bit as to what the process is for bidding and winning contracts and all that other good stuff.
All right. Well, I can tell you right off the bat that one of the things I see in all the Facebook groups and everything is I'm going to buy this contact list, and I'm going to make all these sales calls, and I'm going to make all these phone calls. Making phone calls has never been very successful for us. I had 2 people working for me full time. Their only job was to make sales calls, and after a year, I don't think we got anything off the phone calls they were making. That was their only job. Dave is one of our drivers. He's in the groups making comments now. He was here. We did some sales training with those guys. And he sat down and he actually, as a driver, made some phone calls. And I think he was even surprised at just how hard it is to make a phone call and make a sales call. And then our guys went out, we're here in Florida, and they went out and knocked on some doors and made some in-person sales calls. That's a lot more productive, is to make in-person calls. That being said, we're in a new world now. After COVID-19, this in-person stuff is taboo. I mean, they don't want you anywhere near them. You're not allowed anywhere around. So it's very difficult. Some of the most effective ways to build a relationship with a new customer, a new shipper, is to meet them at trade shows, find out what they do, find out what kind of products they have. Because once you see what kind of products they have and maybe the markets they work in and that kind of thing, then you can start talking to them about how they ship it to these different areas and what kind of shipping needs they have. And then you can work your way in that way. There are no trade shows right now, though. So it's very, very difficult. So that
Right.
kind of only leaves you with, if you can, if you're in an industrial park area when you're making these deliveries and things now, if you can walk across the street, talk to somebody, maybe you see somebody that obviously works at a facility you're aware of at the fast food joint down the street or something like that, and you kind of just small talk with them, that's a lot more effective way to get in. Talking to people you know already, friends, family, things like that, that's a good way to get in. And of course now, just calling in and making those sales calls on the phone, because that's really the only thing available right now that's not, that people won't be afraid to be in the same room with you. That's really your best bet, is just be persistent and actually do that. And somebody was asking, Cam, how did Cam do on that? He moved a few loads. Cam is one of the guys that I had working for me. He was my brother, and he worked with me for about a year. He moved a few loads. He helped dispatch some trucks. He did some things like that. But we had him, and we had another full-time employee up in Ohio, and did not make any direct sales. I guess we had a couple of little things here and there, but definitely no contract work, nothing long-term. And so making those sales calls is very, very difficult. So
Yeah.
I guess
Definitely.
just telling you it's difficult, it doesn't answer your question, because you already know it's difficult. So how do you overcome that being difficult?
Yeah.
That is, be persistent. Be persistent. Yeah, and you really need. So some of the things you need to do is follow up. It's a common sales. I don't know what you'd call it, but most salespeople know that sales are rarely ever made on the first call or the second call or the third call. The average sale is made on usually about the 11th contact. So somebody that calls you one time but never follows up a second time or a third time. And it doesn't just have to be a normal follow-up, but maybe you send them a card at Christmas, or maybe you just send them a few emails here and there checking in, and you just make contact periodically. It takes usually about 11 times before somebody will consider working with you. And at that point, it's really only a maybe. That doesn't mean you close the deal. So you make a phone call. You get some email addresses. You figure out who you're talking to. You call back. You send them a card on their birthday. You send the office a card on the holidays. You send some emails to let them know how you're doing in the middle of that. So those are all the types of things you need to do. I set up a system for those guys the year they were with me. Every call they made, they were logging it, and I have a contact list now. Now I can follow up, do some emails, and that kind of thing, just to keep your name fresh in their mind. That kind of stuff helps with the sale. Now when you call them, you're not an unknown. They've at least heard of you. Maybe they just scrolled through, they saw your name, and they deleted the email. But now when you call them a month later, they at least in the back of their mind that they've heard that name before. So you've got a better opportunity than if you were a complete cold call.
All right. So let me ask you this. What do you think is the common misconception about brokerage and everything? Because I see oftentimes a lot of people think it's easy to become a broker and everything, and that, once you become a broker, you can make millions of dollars or hundreds of dollars, easily.
That is the common misconception. I think there's a couple of things. One is people think you have to be a broker. So I've seen carriers that it'll be one truck operations, a carrier. They have their own authority, and they say, I want to get a broker so I can get some direct customers. So that's one common misconception. You don't have to be a broker. If you are a carrier, you can get direct customers. You do not have to work with brokers. So that's a huge one. And that goes back to one of those, if you are a carrier and you don't know that, then you need to do some more research. You obviously don't have a plan, because that's a major factor, is to understand where you get your customers. So that's the biggest one. Yep. The next biggest one is what you just said, that you're going to get rich quick, and that you're going to make millions of dollars. And that, back when the truckers were protesting in Washington, and they thought that some of the brokers are making 100% profits on some of this stuff. They're paying a truck $1,000 and they're pocketing $1,000 or $1,500 for themselves. That's really just not true, ever. That might happen on some rare occasion, but the trucker has to agree to that, right? So if right now every broker, every shipper is, or during that period rather, every shipper, let me get my phrasing right. Every broker was making sales calls. Every carrier was making sales calls. I know shippers that had to change their phone numbers because their phones were blowing up off the hook from people trying to make sales calls to them because there was no freight. Remember, 70% of the freight was gone.
Right.
So, and so if that's the case, how would it be possible then? Your phone is blowing up off the hook with people offering you better deals. I can save you money. I can cut your rates, because really when you're making a phone call, that's the easiest thing to make a sales pitch on. I can lower your shipping cost of whatever by however much. So if that's coming in nonstop and they say, I can get this load done for you for $1,200, and they've been paying $1,300, or I'm sorry, $3,000, something like that, and they can cut your cost almost in half, you'd be stupid not to do that, right? So that was happening during that time. So brokers that were trying to, capitalize and make double profits and so forth, 100% markups, if that happened, it was on a very, very small scale. And now those are the ones that you're dealing with that, they only have $400 and they're probably digging into their own pocket to get this load moved.
Yeah, that's why they're all moody nowadays, all pissed off, all, seem to have a short fuse.
Absolutely.
No good attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but, and another common misconception about brokerages or brokers is that it's not like some load board like DAT where you just go on there and you tell them what you want for the shipment or something like that. There's no directory of shippers or anything that you just call up and say, hey, well, what do you got going on today? Give me the list of planes that you're running today. It's not like that at all. You have to ask for the business every day.
Every day. So
then usually 9 out of 10 times you're bidding up against brokers like TQL, C.H. Robinson, and it's basically a race down to the bottom. Who can come in at the lowest bid?
Yeah, and especially, I was helping somebody that just got her authority, and she wants to go out and try to get these bids with all these big customers and move volumes of freight. And a small broker that's going to try to move hundreds of loads for one of these mega shippers is going to have a really, really hard time because the profit margins are minuscule, and they make their profits on the volume, right? So, and making all these phone calls. Now, I said, I'm making all these calls and I didn't get any customers out of it. That's, I didn't get any long-term stuff. We got a few loads here and there, but we did establish a lot of relationships, and we did manage to secure some good long-term relationships with some other shippers as well that will turn into something in the future. But our primary source of new customers is the relationships. And you build a really good relationship with a broker or a shipper through a broker, and they will refer people to you. All of our direct customers, thinking about this, I think all of our direct customers that we've had a long-term relationship with have come by way of referrals, either from other brokers. We've had brokers refer freight to us, refer direct customers to us because they couldn't manage it. They couldn't do it themselves. We've had shippers that we've worked with.
Whatever needs they have.
Exactly. Yep. And we've had shippers that we've worked with that we did such a good job for them that they've called us and they wanted to work with us directly. And we don't want to go behind another broker's back, but they've also referred other business to us. That has been our primary source of sales, is build a really strong relationship, and those referrals they're worth their weight in gold. Absolutely. So phone calls, not so much. Building a relationship is the key to both staying consistent in the slow times with brokers and getting direct shippers.
Yeah, it's all about who you know, and here's another thing I want to put out there for your for everybody's thoughts about brokerages and everything. When you go to a shipper and everything, sometimes you'll go to a shipper and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go to this shipper, and maybe I'm a full truckload carrier. Okay, you go to the shipper, you get to the shipper, and you find out, hey, the shipper is not a full truckload, shipper. They do 95% of their freight is LTL. Okay, you're a full truckload carrier. That's not going to appeal to you at all when it comes to, dealing with LTL. Because, I mean, you're thinking, okay, how much is that LTL shipment paying? Oh, $500 for 3 or 4 pallets. So, well, unless you're doing consolidated LTL, you're willing to do multiple stops or something like that, or you have a warehouse, probably not going to work out too well for you, So maybe you as a carrier, full truckload carrier, are not going to be able to service that customer very well.
Correct. Absolutely. Now, that being said, maybe there's a way as a full truck carrier you can figure out a way to make it work. Maybe there's other LTL companies that that might go on that same truckload with them, and you could build it yourself. Maybe you can figure out how to make that work for them.
Right.
All right, Jonathan, I am going to put you back in on hold here. I appreciate the call. We do have a couple other callers on, but nobody has got their hand raised. So if you have anything you want to add, go ahead. And the phone lines are still open, 917-889-9924. If you have anything to add to that. Let me go over here to the... And I apologize, looks like somebody said the volume is down. I think he may have been on a speakerphone or something. I'll try to crank it up for the next one. And let's see here. Let me just take a quick little break to read these comments. Bear with me. All right, here's a great one. Armando says, how can you amend a master carrier agreement when it's an automated system that can't be changed or modified? Absolutely, that's an awesome question. So contracts, what to look for. That's another thing on my paper here. Number 1, do not fill out any contracts on these online automated systems, ever. We refuse to do that unless it's an absolute necessity that we do, and we agree to do that. But we always ask for a PDF copy that we can make changes to, and for the most part, we are successful in doing that. Especially right now, carriers are in a better position to negotiate contracts than they are like back in the spring, because back in the spring, they'll just call the next carrier. Everybody's begging for freight. Right now, they're begging for trucks. So we're in a better position to negotiate these contracts. But do not sign any of these. You've got RMIS. You've got the DAT onboard system. You've got TruckStop has something now. There's all these where your credentials are already on file, your insurance and so forth are already on file, and then they send you a link, and literally I've seen it where there's a check here to accept our terms of service and click here to accept, and you're done. The idea is to make it fast, and fast is never good in your favor. These contracts are horrible, horrible, horrible. I've talked about it before. Things like right of offset. Right of offset is common. What that means is if there is a claim on a load, let's say you have a fleet of trucks, and you've got 10, 20 trucks running for you, and you work for one particular broker, and doing multiple loads, they owe you $100,000 or $200,000. And you have a claim on a load. It doesn't even have to be a filed claim. It could just be a note on the bill of lading that says product was damaged. They have 9 months to file a claim. By law, they have 9 months to file a claim. And then after they file the claim, they have an additional 2 years to litigate, to go to court and argue back and forth. That can take 2 years. The right of offset says that they can hold every penny of that $100,000 or $200,000 until the claim is not just filed, but completely settled, which means potentially up to 3 years. They could hold every penny of your money. And it might not even be a claim. It might just be a note that, yeah, these boxes were ugly. We didn't like them. So they said, oh, that's a potential claim. We're going to hold this. And they may never file a claim, but they can hold your money for 9 months until they close it and they know that there's no claim. That's a right of offset. Recently, I just posted in the Facebook group some additions to that, where not only do they want the right of offset to hold money they owe you, but they want you to turn over all of your receivables to them. They want to bill your customers on your behalf. They want to, which is a way for them to get their foot in the door to back solicit and steal your customers away and back solicit other brokers, because they could just say that, hey, there might be a claim on one of these loads. It's a horrible thing. These contracts, some of them are on an online system, and you can't do anything about it. I would never sign a contract like that. I would never agree to anything like that. We had a contract like that, and they would not agree to change it, so we did not agree to work with them. Yeah, we lost the load. We didn't do the load. But you know what? That load, in my opinion, didn't exist. It's not worth the risk. Don't do it. There's terms in some of these agreements that literally say they don't have to pay you ever. They'll say you cannot, let me try to get the terminology down the way they'll say it. They'll say you cannot pursue payment from anybody but the broker, and in another paragraph, you cannot pursue payment against the broker. You cannot get paid from them. No matter what, you agreed that you cannot send them to collections. They never have to pay you, and you can't do anything about it. That kind of stuff is in these contracts. You can't sign that. What kind of stuff? Indemnity clauses. So indemnify, hold harmless clauses, meaning even if they willingly and knowingly do something wrong, you cannot sue them for it. So they could send you in someplace and they could have you load a product, and knowingly they tell the shipper, we want you to load 80,000 pounds on this truck, but you can't scale anything more than 45,000. They don't care. You go down the road, you run the stop sign. They knowingly did this. They did it to you on purpose. And you could even have documentation, recorded phone calls, all this stuff, knowing. But you sign this indemnity clause that says you cannot hold them responsible for anything. There's nothing you can do about it. Why would you sign that? You can't sign that. Vague wording like arising out of. So I know a story where a guy was backed up to a dock. They were loading him. The guy, it was a big, 5 acres under air, big, huge warehouse. And this forklift drove all the way to the other side of the warehouse to pick up some pallets. And it was a big, tall stack of something. They got underneath it and they picked it up, and that stack fell over and fell on somebody and severely injured them. Well, that happened in a situation arising out of loading your truck, and they held you responsible because it was arising out of. Had nothing to do with you. You were not in any way, shape, or form in control of that. You were not in any way, shape, or form responsible for that, or in direct, you did not cause it. You could not have prevented it, but it was arising out of the situation of you just being there to get loaded, and you get brought up in the lawsuit because of it. You can't sign that. But this stuff is in almost every contract we see. So how can you amend a master carrier agreement when it's an automated system that can't be changed or modified? You don't. You look at it, and if it's something that you don't agree to, you don't sign it at all. You move on. You call the broker and you say, look, I need to negotiate this contract with you. There's terms I don't agree with. If you can send over a PDF copy by email, let me have a look at it and we'll discuss it. If they say they will not agree to any changes, you just tell them to have a nice day, because you cannot work with those terms. There's no reason why a broker needs to be in control of your business. So move on. And I have a long list of things that we could talk about. I've got some real doozies that I've got screenshots of and different things. I have a whole presentation that I put on in front of an audience. I even tell you who the brokers are. I won't do that here because I don't want to be brought up on any legal issues, just telling you who to call and not call. But, be very, very careful. So, I guess this is some really good advice. I won't go on and on about contracts. Here's the advice that you need to know about contracts. You need to read every contract and understand it. I promise you that they are not in some kind of legalese, some different language that you cannot understand. They are pretty straightforward. They make sense. It's irritating to me when they have contradictory terms. When they do that, lawyers aren't stupid, and they're not going to put contradictory terms in their contracts, because if it's contradicting itself, it gets thrown out. So, if you go to court over it, it gets thrown out because it the contract doesn't make sense. So I will cross stuff out and say, look, the term A and term B contradict. This says that I can't do it, and term B says I have to do it. So they contradict each other. And I will try to straighten that out, and they say, we cannot allow any changes to our contract. All right, well, in a case like that, I might sign it because I know that contract doesn't hold water. But if there's terms that are so bad that they're out of this world, horrible for everybody, I won't do it. I won't do it. And the other thing is, it's a risk versus reward. For example, TQL has that right of offset clause, and they're one of the brokers that will enforce the right of offset. So I understand it's in there. They would not let us change it, but they have enough volume and they have enough money that for the most part, our risk, I feel, is minimal on that. It could happen, but we set credit limits with them. Once I get to a point, and I haven't had to do that recently, but Chris would probably remember, 2018 when rates were phenomenal, we got to a point where I had to tell everybody, look, I'm not going to say never use them, but use them as a last resort until they pay some bills, because we've extended more credit than I like. So they extended they exceeded their credit limit with us. We are extending credit, and you have the ability to limit how much credit you extend to any particular customer. All right, so here's the thing I wanted to clear up. Excuse me, let me clear my throat here. All right. Jamie Ford says, if you are under a corporation, they can only sue your profits that are under your company. They can sue your driver, but not you personally. Yes and no. It's pretty easy for most people with a small corporation for that little corporate veil to be pierced. The first thing they will do is they will look at your accounting, and they will see if you've used any of their funds for your personal use. In other words, if you have a debit card on that business account and you go to dinner and a movie and you use that card to do that, you go buy groceries to take home and you use your business card, that corporation is pretty much useless to you. Second, they're going to sue everybody involved. They're going to sue the corporation. They're going to sue the driver. They're going to sue the owners. They're going to sue everybody. So you will be brought up in the lawsuit. The corporation may be a bit of a limit on what you get sued for personally, but you as the manager, you as the owner will be brought up, because this driver that works for you, if this driver was in an accident, but you are the only owner and you are the only manager, why was this driver hired? Why was this driver allowed to operate illegally? Why was this driver not vetted better? Why was this driver, why, if you had a record, ELDs show that they were speeding and you didn't do anything about it, you personally could be held liable, even though you have a corporation. They will find ways. It would take me 5 minutes to find several ways for the owner of a corporation to be liable for these various things that drivers do out there. I recently just had to have a conference call, and I brought up, speeding as an issue with our company, and it has to be addressed, those kinds of things, because it's our name, Elizabeth and I. It's a company. We are incorporated. We're an LLC in Tennessee and corporation in Florida. The broker is a corporation, separate businesses, separate accounts, separate everything. But we own the businesses. Our name is on the paperwork. We are the ones that sign the contracts. We are the ones that are ultimately responsible for all of it, and we will be brought up on these as well. And there's no way to separate yourself from that unless you are completely detached from the business and you just happen to be an owner of some sort, an investor or something. Marquita comes down to relationships and your bottom line. And yeah, it's good to be back, and it's good to see you on here as well, Marquita. Marquita was actually at our event in Kansas City back in 2017. It's good to see her still staying with it. Okay, Ricky says, what is the best way to learn the spot market rates and what lanes pay for someone that's about to go over the road? All right, so there's a lot of tools out there, depending on what type of equipment you want to use. If you're going to pull a reefer, you have a few more resources. One of those is the USDA truckload rate report. And that's free information. USDA truckload rate report. It'll show you where in the country the demand is. It'll show you the types of commodities moving. So apples out of Washington, onions out of Washington, melons out of Florida. It'll be a report like that. It'll show you that the trucks are abundant or adequate supply is how they say it. And then it'll also show rates on certain lanes. So there are some major lanes that they talk about. Excuse me. So that's one way, and that doesn't cost you anything. There are things like DAT trend lines. So DAT trend lines, DAT load board. The trend lines feature is free information. You just Google that, DAT trend lines. It'll show you average rates on each type of trailer, so flatbed, van, reefer, national rates. If you click into that, you can look at year-over-year trends. You can look at regional rates. You can see the West Coast, the Southeast, Northeast, and so forth. You can see what the average rates are for that type of equipment. That's some very, very 30,000-foot view, broad information. And if you want to drill down in further than that, you really need to start paying for the information, which means you'll have to get a load board subscription of some sort. So if you're an owner-operator, you need to look at and see if the carrier you are leased to will let you log into a load board, or if you can get your own load board that maybe you pay for, they let you piggyback off of that. Or if you're getting your own authority, as soon as you get your DOT number, you can log in and get a load board. You can get any of them, Truck Stop, 1, 2, 3, or my preference is DAT. I think DAT has got the most analytic information for rates and lanes and things. And you can do load searches. A lot of brokers do post rates. Posted rates are irrelevant. That is not a direct reflection on what the lanes pay, because whatever they post is negotiable. I wish they couldn't post, to be honest with you. This is the only reason it's useful, is to do some research on lanes. But posted rates are never accurate. They're never what the load actually moves for. So when you get out there and you start moving freight, don't ever book a load based on the posted rate. In fact, if you could turn that column off, I like to use the load board on a tablet or something, so you cannot even search by posted rates, and just ignore that altogether, because a posted rate just is a negotiation anchor, and it screws you up. It'll actually change your thought process on the load. So if you can log in and look at that, see what the averages are. DAT has a feature called Rate View. If you can get a subscription to Rate View, that'll show you 13-month averages across the country. You can drill down and look at state averages and so forth, and lane to lane, state to state, city to city, and you can start really looking at what the rates on average are paying. But again, that is your average that other people are making. It's irrelevant to you. You also need to know what your costs are going to be, and find out, if you can potentially go out and get a customer. Maybe you're not making, where they say a home run on every load, but if you can be consistent, because a lot of people get caught in this trap of trying to, I call it running wild, chasing the money across the country. And they do what Jonathan and I were talking about, and they don't have the relationships. They're working with the next best thing every time. They don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have any relationships and customers to call. They don't have broker contacts in the areas they're running. They're not familiar with the areas they're running, and they're just scouring the load board for the next best thing. And right now it's relatively easy to fall out of the truck into a pile of money, but what happens when the market turns? And when the market turns, you really want to have these relationships in your back pocket. So doing that kind of research, you can call on loads. You can call brokers, ask them, about certain loads, whether or not you have a truck. You could still give them a call and tell them what you're looking for. Let's see. And Chris said, that's the joy of relationships. You move for your rate, even though someone would do it for less. Absolutely. We have, we've had relationships where they call us and there's really no negotiation. They just tell us, this is you'll be happy with this rate. Here you go. It's easy to negotiate with them. Adira says, good stuff. Slow down. I'm writing. I am probably going to do individual shows on each one of these topics. Like I said in the beginning, I'm going on 2 hours and I'm feeding you guys with a fire hose. I've got so much. I want to talk about the hours of service and the split sleeper berth because there's a lot of misinformation about that. The clearinghouse, that's another thing on my list. The DOT, Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. There are still people that don't even know what this is. By January, everybody needs to have a report pulled on them. Everybody. Now, the misconception is if you have not changed jobs, you don't need to register. And that's only true to a point. The carrier still has to pull a broad background check on you. So there's 2 levels of queries, they call them, 2 levels. And one is a real specific and one is just a broad, and I forget what they call those 2. But every carrier by January, they had 1 year to phase this in, but by January of 2021, every carrier must pull a broad background check on every driver in their fleet. So they can get permission and do a full query, or they can do a limited query. I guess that's how they call it, limited and full. So a limited query must be done on every driver. If something comes back on a limited query, they have to do a full query on that driver. So, but every driver by January should have this query pulled on them. They do not have to have the full, so they don't have to have, they don't have to submit to that. But the carriers should give them a permission slip, so to speak, allowing them to pull a limited query on every driver. That's something that every carrier needs to understand, and every driver needs to know what's about to happen. Because the misconception was that if you did not change jobs, you did not need to enroll. You don't have to necessarily enroll, but you will be queried. You will have that. Trailers are hard to find right now, and this is Jonathan again. Okay, 2 things here. How does a small carrier add capacity if no rental trailers are available? And trailers are hard to find right now due to peak season or FEMA relief efforts going on right now. So that's tough right now. We were fortunate that we were able to get several trailers ahead of this. We actually rented 4 new trailers just before things got really tight. I've got 2 van trailers, just general freight. Dave has a van and or a reefer available right now as well. And I've got a flatbed available right now. So we have trailers available. A lot of fleets are struggling to find trailers. I've got potentially 3 vans and a reefer and a flatbed. So I think Dave would prefer to lease out his reefer. So there's a reefer available and a van available. And I know it's a shameless plug, but right now people are looking for places to go that have trailers. We've got trailers and we've got the opportunities. So that is the limiting factor for a lot of carriers. If they don't have the equipment, they cannot hire any new drivers. So that's really, really tough. Drivers that have their own trailers are a premium commodity right now. So definitely a driver that owns a trailer is preferred, and it's very difficult because if you cannot get trailers, trailers are on back order for several months right now. A leasing company, one of the bigger, I guess it's Metro Leasing, everybody's probably heard of them. They have 2,000 trailers on order, and they're supposed to start taking delivery in January, and most of those have already spoken for. But that is your only option. You get on the waiting list, and you hope that some come in. Let's see. And I'm just reading all the comments. Let's see. All right, so this was another thing that maybe you made the comment, Lindell. What about things a new owner-operator can read, listen to, or watch to become more mechanically experienced? Well, that's kind of a tough one. So the first thing is your owner's manual would probably be a good place to start. I think a lot of people overlook the basics. For your particular truck, looking through the entire owner's manual, you may be able to buy a service manual about about your specific equipment, your truck, trailer. If you have a reefer, knowing that reefer unit inside and out, knowing the types of coolant and so forth, and how to program it is a good idea. So read those owner's manuals inside and out. I think that is the key to starting to learn what to look for, because I think being mechanically inclined and knowing the issues stems from understanding the equipment first. So knowing how things should be working and how they react and getting experience with the equipment first is the key to that. So owner's manual and some basic service manuals are a start. The next thing would be to spend some time with a mechanic that you trust and build a relationship with a mechanic that you trust. I am personally going to be doing some YouTube stuff, I think, on some mechanical stuff, alignment and suspension things. And there are a lot of YouTube videos out there specifically about that. I think that's a good place to find videos. You can pretty much find a video on YouTube to do just about anything these days. So if you have a question about something, how something's supposed to work, look up and find a YouTube video about it. There are a lot of Facebook groups like Maintenance Matters and different trucking maintenance groups that will answer questions, and there's a lot of threads in there about that. And really, again, I think the most valuable thing is to actually do it yourself. Get in there and work on it yourself. Figure out, I recommend everybody that if you're an owner-operator, if you own a grease gun and you get under there and you grease your truck yourself, it's a good idea to be able to be familiar with it, know what you're looking at. Because if you take your truck to a shop, and this happens to me, I consider myself very mechanically inclined. Up to the point that rebuilding an engine would not be out of my capabilities if I needed to. And I will take a truck to a shop, and they will tell me a list of things that are wrong that I know are complete BS. I've had our drivers call, and they will tell me what the shops are telling them, and it's complete BS. And I've taken my truck to a shop, to a Freightliner dealer, and I know it's just a sensor here or there. I remember one time we took an old Freightliner FLD to a dealer, and it was the oil pressure gauge was flickering. And it had the Maxwell engine start module in it and had a bunch of aftermarket things. And they tested it, and they said, well, it needs 4 new batteries. It needs an ECM. It needs a new alternator. It's got some electrical shorts. And then once we fix all that, we can diagnose it to see if there's an issue with your oil sensor. Well, how about you just change the oil pressure sensor? Oh, we can't do that until we do all these other things. And it's going to be about $7,500. Okay, and you don't know if anything, the oil pressure sensor is bad or not. No, we know all these other things are bad. And I said, so you think it needs 4 batteries, right? Oh, yeah, it needs all 4 batteries. Well, it's only got 3 batteries in it. So something tells me that your diagnosis is off somewhere, right? So I've had them do that. They would not touch it. It was a $50 part. I pulled it out and drove it a mile down the road, put the sensor in it. It took me 10 minutes to do it myself, and we drove that truck another year without any issues whatsoever. It was literally just an oil pressure sensor, and they didn't know what they were doing. But if I didn't know that it had only 3 batteries in it, if I wasn't familiar with that it was just the oil pressure gauge flickering, when they came back with all these other things, I wouldn't know that it was a line of BS, right? So being familiar with the equipment yourself is probably the key, and getting under it and looking things over, seeing things are loose, doing a really thorough inspection. That is the key to getting ahead of and being mechanically inclined and saving a lot of money when you have issues with mechanics. Okay. And I know we are getting close to 2 hours, so I was going to do an hour show, and this is how it always used to be. But I am going to do a lot of these topics individually. So there's a couple other questions I'm going to answer here, and then there's a couple of quick topics I want to talk about. And Elizabeth's giving me warnings. Time is up. Time is up. But we're not done yet. We've got a lot to talk about. I've got a glass of water. As long as I can keep my whistle wet, we can keep going. All right. Chris says he's got a couple of YouTube videos for maintenance. A good place to look also, alignment, suspension, tire wear. Those are some of the major things that people have to work on. If you look up MD Alignment, I think they have their own Facebook group, and they've got a lot of information on there. All the shops around the country post pictures and different things that they're discovering. It'll help you watch for that. Let's see. Trucks, engines, ISX. I know there's a Series 60 Detroit group. There's DD15 groups. All right. Best place to find drivers, really word of mouth. I've not found any drivers that were worth a damn other than word of mouth or, like social media where they've heard of me through stuff like this that I'm doing. But I know when somebody hears about me from doing these shows, they are genuinely interested in learning. They're teachable. And if you've, run ads and different things that are just chasing money and they've got 5 jobs this year or this month sometimes, and they're just looking for the next best thing, they're not going to be worth your time. So the best place to find drivers is just referrals. Put it out there and start talking to people, even in the Facebook groups. Speak about why you like Freightliner in Detroit before anything else. This coming from the guy with a Peterbilt. So Freightliner in Detroit, the reason I like them is, number one, cost of operations is probably the lowest of anything. Freightliner service points are everywhere. Detroit diesel seems to be one of the most reliable engines. Detroit owned by Mercedes. Mercedes designed and engineered a lot of the emissions technology. They have it pretty well perfected, and a lot of the other companies tried to use what they built. And that's why a lot of the other companies are failing at it. But, even your TA and Petro shops are Freightliner service points. So they are authorized dealers. They can even do warranty work. So Freightliner and Detroit engines, to me, are just because they're the most common, and you can get them worked on just about anywhere. Freightliners, the brand new Freightliners, Dave is in this group. He's got a 2020 Western Star. His 2020 Western Star has the exact same suspension as the 2012 Columbia that I bought from him. The same suspension as my 2002 Century. Sorry. And even the same suspension as my 1994 Freightliner FLD. It's the exact same parts. Matter of fact, I had to use the VIN number off of one of the other trucks to buy parts for the other. They're all exactly the same parts. So, they've pretty much got the bugs worked out of a lot of that. There are issues that most people are aware of. There are things that, that people know how to fix. It's when you get new technology that people don't know how to fix. And Detroit's been around for a while. Their emission stuff is obviously the weakest link in every engine, and theirs is probably been around the longest. Their technology's been around longer than most. So cost of operation, ease of repairs, places to get stuff done, parts are available everywhere. That's why I prefer Freightliner, or Western Star is, basically Freightliner and Detroit engines. Detroit everything. Detroit, drive lines, everything. I like it. And there was a time when, the Peterbilts and Kenworth were nicer trucks, to be honest. But these days, they're all just plastic trucks. Even the classic hood trucks are all just plastic trucks on the inside to me. They don't look anything special. There's nothing. They all fall apart after a while. All right.
$90.
All right, the phone call. If phone lines are open still for another 90 seconds. Looks like the few calls that we did have dropped off, but the lines are open. If Anybody who wants to call in, you've got 90 seconds to make the call. All right. So this is the last thing I want to talk about. The new hours of service and the split sleeper berth. And I'm going to end it with this.
60 seconds.
I'm going to end it with this. You can do at least 2 hours up to 3 hours, either off-duty or sleeper berth. And combine that with at least an 8 to 7 to 8, to make up a total of 10. So if you do a 2 hour, you can do an 8 hour. You do a 3 hour, you can do a 7 hour. You can do 2.5 and 7.5, any combination, at least 2 up to 3 and at least 7 up to 8. The longer portion, the 7 to 8 hour break, must be in the sleeper berth. The only rule is that longer break must be in the sleeper berth. The shorter break can be
10
either one.
seconds.
Got another call at the last second. I'm assuming you're calling in because you have something to talk about. Go ahead and press 1. You will be the last caller for the night, and he's gone. So the longer of the break, the 7 to 8 hour break, at least 7 up to 8, must be logged in the sleeper berth. Okay? They can be in any order. You can do the shorter break first, or you can do the longer break first. You can do it in either order. It will extend your 14-hour clock. It extends your 14-hour clock whether or not your ELD shows it. And this has been a lot of confusion. Something that you have to understand is your ELD, the little red line, the little alerts that you get, the DOT officer does not see any alerts. They don't see a red line. The violations are not flagged in the inspection mode. Only you see that. So there are drivers that go on personal conveyance because they're out of drive time. They go on a personal conveyance because it doesn't flag a violation. It doesn't matter because when the DOT officer adds the hours up and they see that you are on personal conveyance, if you did not use it correctly, you're in violation, right? So it has to be used correctly. The DOT officer is going to add it up. Some of them have things to scan it or whatever, and they're going to want to know the details. But the violations are not flagged. That little red line or that little exclamation point or however your system does it is just for you, the driver, to know that there's a warning there. So you have to understand the rules. Most of the ELD companies have figured this out now. And sometimes a little box you have to check or a switch you have to toggle or what have you. Most of them have it figured out, and it will show you the longer extended period. But you can do either the 2 to 3 or the 7 to 8 in either order. You do not have to do the longer one first. You do not have to do the shorter one first. The shorter one can be off-duty or sleeper berth. The longer one must be sleeper berth. Okay? Now, if there's questions on that, let me know. I can try to elaborate more. But here's the one place where I think people get in trouble. That longer break must be in the sleeper berth. So let's say that you are on a load and you are going home. And maybe you take 2 hours in the sleeper while you're getting loaded. And that gives you that up to 16 hours now. You could do 3. Maybe you get up to 17 hours to drive. And that gives you enough time to go home. Now you get home and you go off duty. And let's say you do a 34. And so you log it off duty. If you log it off duty, that will not supplement the 2 to 3 hour break that you took. Because remember, that longer portion must be in the sleeper berth. If it's not in the sleeper berth, that 2 to 3 hour portion does not extend your 14-hour clock. So even if you do 10 hours, 34 hours, if it's not in the sleeper berth, at least the 7 to 8 in the sleeper berth, it will not work to extend your clock, which means when you go back to work after your 34-hour break and you get pulled over for an inspection and they look back at that, you were in violation for that 2 to 3 hours past your 14 that you were driving because you did not log sleeper berth time. Now that 2 to 3 hour break did not extend your 14-hour clock, regardless of if your log showed it or not. So if you take a 2 hour break and you toggle the little switch and now it shows that you're not in violation, but then you don't take your other half of the break, now you are in violation. So if you're going to use this rule, you must understand how it works. Dave says, if you have two-hour breaks before the 8, does it extend to 18 hours? No. You can extend only up to 17 hours total. And the breaks must be consecutive of 2 to 3 hours. So it's going to extend only 2 hours. If you did a 2-hour break and a 1-hour break, it doesn't count. Only the 2-hour break counts. If you do a 2-hour break and a 3-hour break, the longer of the two will count, so you do a 3-hour break. But 2 separate breaks are not consecutive. They have to be consecutive breaks. Okay, I'm not sure if this... What if my ELD is screwed up, but I feel like I can drive damn near like I'm back on paper? Well, there are people that are in exempt trucks. There are issues where if your ELD actually is broken, you can run on paper. But if you're logging it as if you're on paper and you are inspected, something that everybody should do is go into the DOT inspection mode and look to see what kind of information is shown. Every time you start the truck, every time the truck starts moving, every time you turn the truck off. So if you stop at a truck stop for the night, you do your 10-hour break, and every hour you get up and run the truck for an hour to charge your battery or turn the air on or heat on or whatever, it will show that. Every hour you started the truck, every hour you turn the truck back off, it shows everything. You move the truck 5 miles an hour, it triggers it. Whether or not you are logged into it, it will show that that truck has moved. Does that extend the 11 driving hours also? No, it does not. That does not extend. I'm going to try to do a stream like this once a week right now. It will not be on a regular scheduled time frame, so once a week. But the 11 hours is not extended. However, there isn't a way to extend the 11 and the 14. Yeah, all right. So if you are caught in adverse driving conditions, so let's say you're driving, between Phoenix and Flagstaff, and there's one of those freak snowstorms and shuts the road down, and you get stuck there for a couple hours, you can extend your 11. You can also extend your 14. So the new guidance, the new rule allows you to extend your 11 because you were always able to extend your 14 for that, but now you can also extend your 11. That's the only time you can extend your 11. And Chris says that's a stupid technicality, and Adrian says that does not sound right, but that's how it works. The way the rule is worded, the 7 to 8 hour break, the longer of the two, must be logged in the sleeper berth. And then, so you're saying logging out of the truck for 34, that does not count. No, it does not count. It must be in the sleeper berth. You also cannot use this rule if you're in a day cab. If you don't have a sleeper, you cannot log sleeper berth time if you are in a truck that does not have a sleeper berth. What is your opinion on onions? Onions are easy. They can pay decent. Depends on how you're transporting them. So onions you can haul onions in a van. You can haul onions in anything really, a flatbed, reefer. Flatbed is actually probably the preferred method because you want as much air blown across them as possible. If you are in a van, you need to. If you're in a van, you need to make sure you have the big vents, the big inspection door vents, not just the little louvers where they drill 4 holes. That's just not enough air. The onions don't need to be kept cool or dry. They need, cool or anything. They just need as much airflow to keep that onion smell from just getting too strong because they cause themselves to rot. They get what's called sour peel. They rot from the outside in, and I remember I picked up a load of onions in Spokane, Washington one time, and they smelled so good I just wanted to eat them like apples. They were just amazing the way they smelled, and I'm not a big onion fan. I get to the other end, and when I opened up those doors, that smell hit me, and I about buckled over. It was horrible. So what is your opinion on onions? Do you like them? But yeah, so. But Armando says a hot shot setup. A hot shot set does not count. If the hot shot has a bunk in the back, so some of them have converted the back seat to a bed, and it's got to meet the requirements. There are written requirements on exactly what it needs to have a bunk. And then the new ELD rule is wonderful. Love it. I'm way more productive. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to wrap the show up on this. New ELD rule is more productive. Created a lot more capacity. We were talking about that earlier with the market, and we started the show with that. A lot of new carriers, a lot of new trucks. Everybody's buying trailers. Carriers are expanding their capacity. And add to that, the ELD rule is now increased driver, from 14 hours to 17 hours. And almost every truck can take advantage of that, because everybody that gets loaded during the day, you sit at a dock for 2 to 3 hours getting loaded. You're going to log that off duty or sleeper berth. Almost every single truck takes advantage of that. That is a huge amount of new capacity that just hit the roads, made every truck legal. It does add a lot of flexibility. As a driver, I get it. Now, I mean, honestly, you almost don't even have to pay attention to your hours of service. They're so flexible, unless you're just doing coast-to-coast stuff and you never stop. The new ELD rule is great. I am not a fan of working 17-hour days, because everybody knows that you log sleeper berth or off duty while you're getting loaded, and you're not in the back sleeping. You're doing other stuff. You're not getting adequate rest, which is implied. So I don't think it's the greatest thing. I think ultimately, when the market shifts back the other way, we're going to regret it. But it is what it is now. People ask for this. And, the other thing is the half-hour break now can be on duty. So while you're getting loaded, that 15 minutes of, getting loaded, getting your paperwork, that counts toward that half-hour break, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of flexibility now. I think it definitely made it to where you don't have to worry as much about hours of service, but I don't think it's good for business. So I think ultimately it's going to affect us in a negative way. All right, guys. We went 2 hours and almost 15 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up. This was way longer than I wanted to. I'm back. I'm going to do this again. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the calendar. Next week I leave out, and we're pretty much on the road as a team all the way through January. But I do stop back here in the office about once or twice a week. So during those times, I will look to try to jump on here and do a show, but it'll definitely be more brief. I'm not going to do 2-hour shows, because I'm going to be enjoying my time home. And then the person that was just asking about the, enjoying the flexibility of the new hours of service is also asking about running local. Running local has a whole different set of hours. If you're within a 150-mile air radius, so straight line miles as the bird flies, if you're at 150 miles, you have a whole different set of rules. I'm not going to get into all of that. But, basically you punch a clock and it's easy. So you can be profitable doing local or intermodal, but again, you need to have a plan. That's what I said. You've got to have a business plan. Know who your customers are. Know what local means to you. So, all right, guys. That's it for me tonight. Everybody have a good night. I will be back again sometime next week. Maybe we'll do a show on Monday. I'll have to look and see what the calendar looks like. Maybe over the weekend we'll do something. But we'll try to do one a week, just based on rates and lanes. And I'll try to, drill in and really give some information on some of these topics going forward. But I've got just so many things, and if you guys have anything you want to add or say, when the show is on, the phone lines will be open, and throughout the week, send me messages, put the stuff on Facebook, and keep this conversation going in the group. And we will talk to you again next week. Have a good night, everybody.